So now we're going to do some painting, correcting things like that. As you can see, those black bits there cracked like there's nobody's business just there. Hopefully as you can just see. I've got a couple of colours just to sort of show you. I'll show a couple of them, but then they're pretty much all the same, so I'll just show you what colour matches I got. So first off, black. I mean, black's pretty straightforward. I'm using Vallejo Model Airs 057 black. Right, and I'll show you that nasty bit just there. You probably could use any sort of black, right? But it's always good to test it a little bit. What we're going to do with the Vallejo, I find you don't necessarily have to water them down so much, but we're just going to get a little bit onto, you know, a nice little palette just here. Bit of water just here off camera, and we're just going to mix that and give it a little bit of water just to thin it down. We thin our paints down plain and simply because if your paint's too thick and you paint it straight on, it's going to sort of dry quicker, and you end up sort of leaving brush strokes on there. But if you thin your paint, it sort of levels out nicer, it goes down nicer, and you don't have those brush strokes. Basically is what you're sort of trying to avoid, is the brush strokes, right? You want to sort of almost make it look like it's sprayed on. So just getting this now. This is a little bit tricky because, you know, you've got to sort of be careful, have a nice steady hand, and then we're just going to sort of paint on here like so. And hopefully, as you can see, these cracks disappear pretty sort of quickly, but you have got to sort of be fairly neat, fairly steady. Rotating the model does help, right? But if you do make a mistake, which I'm just going to do a deliberate mistake now, right, like so. If you do make a mistake, the cool thing is that we've glossed this model, right? So getting a cotton wool bud, maybe a little bit moist, we can take this mistake here, and all we do is wipe it up, just like so. We can wipe that away. And the reason for this is we've just painted down, the paint is still relatively wet, right, so it's not going to be sticking, and we can wipe it up. And because we've got a gloss coat, right, because we've got a gloss coat down, the paint just flows off it. You can just wipe it off off a glossy surface a lot easier than, say, a rougher surface. So having that gloss coat down first before we start doing painting helps. In the situation with this warp nacelle just here, you want to be a little bit careful because I've just sprayed on, as you've just seen, and that what we've just sprayed on leaves a light rough surface. We haven't put gloss coats or anything on top of it, so painting inside here and making a mistake, you know, it's a little bit harder to sort of wipe up, and actually you can wipe away this grey paint if you wipe too hard. So maybe, you know, if you're sort of a little bit new to it, maybe gloss this over, give it a quick spray of gloss paint, and then start painting the red in the middle, so as if you do make a mistake, you can wipe it up a lot easier, like I've just shown there. Now we have thinned our paint, so it is possible we're going to have to put maybe 2, maybe 3 coats of paint on there to get that to go away. It is black, so it doesn't normally take that many coats, but then we have, like, say, our warp nacelles just here. Sorry, no, not our warp nacelles, our phaser arrays just here. Hopefully you can just see that little bit of a crack in there. Now I found this paint, I'm just cleaning off my paintbrush, dipping it in some water on a kitchen paper towel just here. We'll wipe it up until it's basically nice and clean. Yeah, I mean, if you did want to, if you by the way, because we are paintbrushing now, quick little tip here, good old brush cleaner and preserver, always good to get one of these. It cleans your brushes up really well, and at the end, if you have a little bit on there, it kind of preserves. It's like a conditioner, hair conditioner, which is rather cool. Now the phaser arrays, I've gone with Citadel's layer paint. This is their Dawnstone, right? Really cool sort of colour, which is a pretty close match. Now that's another thing about painting these, is getting as close a match as you possibly can, but don't worry if it's not as close as you'd like, right, which I'll explain in a bit. So again, we are going to need to thin this paint. These Citadel paints are cool in the sense that they're quite thick paints, which basically means you get a higher pigment count, which means you thin it down a little bit more and the paint goes a little bit further. Right, and we're just getting this to a nice thin consistency that's going to give us good coverage, right, but not be too thick that we end up leaving brush strokes. And then what we can plain and simply do is now paint onto these phaser arrays very nice and carefully, which will remove those cracks. And hopefully you've seen that those cracks are basically sort of disappearing now. Again, you know, 2 or 3 coats and it should be all good, and it's a pretty damn close match with those phaser arrays just there. Just to sort of let you know what I've got so far in colour matches, right, as you've just seen, the blacks, you know, Dawnstone for our phasers. Now this aggressor grey that we used earlier for our impulse engines, which is 274 model air, I'm using this for this kind of grey just here for these areas. As you can see, we've got some cracks in there, a nice good match going on there. Pretty much what else we got, these areas here, hopefully you can already see I've already sort of painted these ones in. Then now this colour is, when it goes down it doesn't look like a match, right, but what we've got here is the US Air Force light grey, which is again model air 121. I'm using that for all these areas, lots and lots of these kind of grey sort of panels with the decals and everything. You'll probably need it on this underside here. See these windows, these decals here actually had to suck inside these window areas here, which did create cracks. I have already sort of painted them in, just testing it and everything, so I don't really have any to show you. I think there's a bit of a crack in this one, pretty sort of hard to see, but if I paint it down it does not look like it's gonna actually do it. So if I just get a bit on the end of my paintbrush, what we're going to do, we're just going to paint inside this little window area where we've got a little bit of a crack, and immediately you can sort of see that actually that's not exactly the best colour match. It almost looks a little bit lighter than the rest that's going on here. However, when it dries, it does dry down to a very close match, and I think I painted a little bit here, and it's this one's actually dried right on the end of my thumbnail there. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it does dry to a very sort of close match. And once you put a gloss coat on top, I do believe that ends up being pretty much hard to actually see any sort of difference in colour. So when you first put it down, don't worry about it, it does dry to a nicer finish. And then we have the whole blending side of it. So those are all pretty much the colours you're going to come up against. I do have to sort of sort out a bit of blue up here again. We've got a bit of like crackage and stuff going on there. I'll find that one out later. But when it comes to blending, don't worry about it not being an absolutely perfect match. Because when it comes to colours, what you sort of need to remember is we're going to go off now. We're going to once we've painted this, seal it in with another gloss coat. We're going to do a bunch of weathering, maybe do a bit of, you know, final post shading with some spraying. Then we're going to seal it in with a matte coat. And the thing is when that happens, your colours change, right? So where we've done those little bit of painting and it might look a little bit off, as long as it's as close as possible, do you know what? Just simply putting a gloss coat down, putting the matte coat down at the end, even those things that you think are clear will do a bit of blending, right? Because they do sort of change the colour just ever so slightly, and in some cases just enough to actually kind of hide what we're doing here. But the weathering side of it, coming in with washes, potentially pigments, oil colours, all this kind of stuff. Those things are going to change the colour, and when you've got two colours that are sort of a close match and you put washes on top of that, they're going to blend in, and you know, so don't worry too much about the colours not quite matching up. We're going to blend them in and hide them anyway, which sadly we have to do because of these decals, but just try not to worry about it too much, because we want to do a nice bit of weathering. So I'm going to carry on painting all these. Oh, by the way, I did forget to mention our impulse engine just here. I have started painting it straight up, kind of, what is this one? This one's Evil Sun's Scarlet. This one's by Citadel as well. Nice paint to paint in there, and I want to do some oils and stuff in there to kind of make it look like it's like a impulse pulsing or something, a couple of oranges, maybe yellows or something, which should be quite cool. But apart from that, I'm just going to basically go around now, paint all of this, seal it in with another gloss coat, hopefully get rid of most of the mistakes, and then we're going to jump in to weathering.